Director and co-writer Wes Anderson. Yeah, that's good. And now Mrs. Fox herself, Meryl Streep. And the littlest Fox Ash, Jason Schwartzman. All right, we did it. Thank you for coming. It's all done now. And here they are. Here are the Fox families. Each of you having your own image. Yep. It's very fetishistic and strange. And I have the book. All right, Wes, I'm going to start with you because in the beginning was the word, and you're not Roald Dahl, but you did adapt it with Noah Baumbach. And so I have to say this right away because it's an animated movie. It's stop-motion animation. Were you just completely fed up with flesh and blood actors?
Well, no. In fact, I've always loved stop motion, and for some reason I've always loved stop motion with fur. I don't know why that is, but just the textures of it, About 10 years ago, I had this idea. I started thinking I'd like to do a stop-motion movie, and the idea popped into my head of doing this book, which was the first Roald Dahl book I had read as a child, and one of my favorite books. And also, I had this copy of it from when I was 7 years old that I had kept with me and always had on my shelves wherever I lived. So I approached the Dahl estate about it at that point.
You were obsessed.
I was a bit, yeah.
It's just, then as an obsessed person approaching the Dahl estate, were they just terrified of you and say, go away and we'll call you in another year or two? Or did they welcome you with open arms?
I felt welcomed, honestly. I had lunch with Dahl's widow, Lissy Dahl, here in New York, and I liked her very much immediately. And then she invited me to come to Gypsy House, Dahl's house in England. And the feeling of it was you really got his personality from the house. And the story is set there, and he had written it there, and I was very inspired by it. And we ended up actually writing. We started working on the script at Noah Baumbach and I at Gypsy House. And we were inspired by Dahl every step of the way of it.
Well, Meryl, I can ask you too about how you felt about this book and this material because you've done things. But I've got to say first, this is your first love scene on film with George Clooney. And it has to be this. Was there any resentment toward Wes for this happening?
I think that's as close as I'm going to get, frankly.
Oh, come on.
But it was great. And I was really flattered to be asked to be the voice of Mrs. Fox, because I'd read all the books to my kids when they were little. And my kids especially responded to stories that were not sort of just happy, and they loved the things that were darker, like the Sendak books and Roald Dahl. So I was really familiar with all the books.
So you raised the proper twisted family that would be able to accept these books the way they were written.
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
And their elegance, they're just beautifully written, and they don't talk down to kids, which is part of why kids like them, and parents can stand to read them.
Yeah. Jason, you are Ash. You are the son in the books. There's many more children than you, and it's all fallen to you now to play Ash. You are all the Fox children rolled into one.
Thank
Pressure?
You.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Pressure?
Pressure?
Yes. Was that a good answer? Yes, a lot of pressure.
That's good.
Yeah, I am the only son now in this movie, and but it was, it's always a lot of pressure to go to work. But when you have Wes Anderson, it's you're going into battle with someone who's going to protect you. So it wasn't that much pressure.
Well, you've had, so to speak, Wes Anderson before. You know, I mean, you are Max Fisher. And for many of us, I'm sure it's, no, come on.
Thank you.
You have to bow to things that need bowing to, okay? So tell us a little, those that haven't seen the movie yet, what is going on in this movie with Mr. and Mrs. Fox? Where is their relationship?
Well, Mr. Fox is sort of incorrigible in a way, and he made a promise to domesticate when he got married and had a child. Or a little fox. Yeah, he didn't have a child. And he broke his promise. So that's where they are, right, during this. And it has sort of dire consequences, not just for their relationship, but their family, their friends, and the whole little community of animals that live under the Bunce Bean Bogus Farm.
Yeah, me too.
I like that use of domesticate. I've never heard it used like that way. It's literal and it's also metaphorical.
Yep.
I'm going to use that myself.
Okay, you can, yeah.
This is a good thing. When you and Noah Baumbach are putting that script together, though, and you're dealing with this, you've had to add things to it. You have, there are many, this was what, 80, how many pages of this book? How do you set about doing that? And did you collaborate with Meryl and George Clooney on the creation of those characters?
Well, you know, the book is short. That is not actually the book. That's the making of, which is much longer, in fact. The book is it's just very slim, and
this is the much longer making of book.
Yes, that was a more involved process. So we knew we had to add. We sort of had to add a first chapter, and we were going to keep it going at the end of it. I think it was natural for us to be inventing new parts of the story. The surprising thing for me was when we were just surprised when we every now and then got to say, or when we reached a certain point, when we got to say, we're trying to think of what happens next, and we finally said, well, let's see what happens in the book. We could just look in that. And from that point on, we said, let's just look what he did. That worked. Let's do that. So that really was kind of an inspiring and helpful thing to actually have a book. And the other thing was we always had we always had this idea of trying to imagine how would Roald Dahl have done it, and trying to come up with our version of that.
In that way lies madness sometimes, though, because you never get the answer, do you?
No, you don't. You don't. You're not getting the answer, but at least it's something to kind of aspire to. But I will say, while we were writing it, we were thinking of animals, only animals, even though we weren't writing in particularly animal, they're written as people, I guess, but only when often I think of casting during the writing. In this case, as soon as we finished it, I thought of, who would be the ideal people, and we actually got it's the first time I've ever actually gotten the first choices for, all the main parts, anyway, that's it.
Well, it's not many animals that say to their wife, you still look as fine as a creme brulee. That's pretty great. Yeah, I don't hear the foxes in my neighborhood do that, but they should, and it might be what's going on in their heads. Jason, this is going to be so high pressure for you. This is just really, really hard. It's identification. You're playing now this only child, this son of this person who has his insecurities. I don't know certain things. How do you approach doing that then? How are you taking on that responsibility of playing this insecure person when you yourself are basically an egomaniac?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Well, most egomaniacs are insecure, for the record.
He's speaking on behalf of all of them.
Speaking on behalf of all of us. First thing is we did a lot of the performances, in most of them in a group form. So some of these bigger scenes that you'll see in the movie, we did with George and Bill and Walla Walla Darsky. And I suppose that, as Wes just said, they didn't think about actors, when they were writing it, they were just thinking about animals. Well, when I read the script, I thought this could just be people. This could just be about people. It doesn't have to. It's not necessarily about animals. You could just cast humans in this, and you know what I mean. And what they're talking about at all, it could work like a feature film movie, not animated. And I think all of us being there together in a group, acting the scenes out, I didn't think about foxes or a 12-year-old. I just thought, I thought about 12-year-old, but I didn't think about being an animal or anything. I just tried to play the scenes, as best I could, looking at George Clooney. And I've noticed we only call him George Clooney. We never call him George. Have you noticed that? It just feels better.
On it,
I think it's his first name, George Clooney. But no, that was just how I approached it. But but I shared some of the insecurities that my character feels. My character is an adolescent fox who is littler than the rest and wants to be a better athlete, and also likes a girl who doesn't like him back. And in fact, not only does she not like him back, but she likes someone that he's very close to. And that was a majority of my teenage years was spent liking girls that liked my really good friends. So I've been there, done that. But I never went like, my character's a bit more grumpy. He spits, for instance, and he's prickly, and he just looks, he's angry. And I never personally went there, for the record, but I had a lot in common with this 12-year-old fox.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Never with the spitting.
No, I never spat.
The anger has to be there. I mean,
below?
yeah, there's
Perhaps.
a little,
Perhaps.
just
Perhaps.
a little bit there.
Perhaps.
You did say something that is very unusual for any animated movie, stop motion or anything, that you looked at George Clooney. You could look at the people. What animation has been traditionally, and you were saying to me before, I just didn't know. I didn't know when the voices came in. I sort of came to this not knowing what the rules were. But what happens is people usually come in and record in their own little isolation booth without anybody, and you did something different. Can you explain?
Yes, well, we the first recordings we did on a farm in Connecticut, which I think was partly just because I didn't really know the way it's normally done, and I thought a lot of this takes place kind of on farms and things like that. We'll need to start with a farm, and I thought it might be nice to have everybody together, and it was a bit like a summer camp. We added different things along the way. Not everybody was available in the same moment, and I wrote new parts and we added things. So there were many recording sessions in lots of different circumstances over a couple of years. But I think there were some ideas that came out of that approach that we wouldn't have had. Like, for instance, we had a scene where Jason's character and George Clooney's character and our friend Wally, they see this wolf on a hillside, and we were getting ready to record this, and it was end of the day, and it was the wind was blowing through the trees, and there was a nice mood, and I thought we should probably get somebody to be the wolf. If anybody can, somebody just do the wolf for us so they can be watching. And Bill Murray, his character was not in the scene, but he was standing there with his hands in his pockets, and he said, I can do that. And he sort of trotted up this hill off into the distance, into the far, far distance. And, he was very small on the horizon. And we watched him go. We waited. And then we said, okay, let's do it. And he was a great wolf. He
Even at
really,
a distance.
I think he knew to play it at that distance. He knew how to sell it at that distance, and it was really, there was an expertise about his wolf and a mood that was very touching. And I taped it with my phone. I filmed him. We brought that back to England and gave it to our animator, who eventually worked on that shot, and he based it on Bill Murray's wolf. And, he was a good wolf.
I hope that's on the DVD.
I'm sure it will be.
Yeah. All right, it's time now to take questions from the audience, so raise your hand. Somebody will get you a mic, or you'll just talk really loud. Over here?
Oh, yeah, I got it. Hi, my question is from Meryl. Okay, so Laurette Taylor said
Yeah.
that imagination is the key to developing an effective character.
I agree with that.
You do?
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your process is to developing a character?
I don't have one, but I have a
Nice.
different one on every movie, which makes it a little bit terrifying and which makes it probably good for me. On this one, you had nothing to do with the preparation for this, because I was in London and I was shooting a film before I got the offer to do this. And I was living on a little mews, and I was in the 3rd floor, and I came home very late at night, and I was in my bathroom, and I looked out, and down the mews, which is in the center of London, in the lamplight, was a fox. And it was loping along, and I went, oh! My window was wide open, because it was summer, and it went like this. And we looked at each other for 12 minutes. 12 minutes. I had my little clock, and I kept looking. But we didn't break our, engagement for that amount of time. It was so surreal. I have never looked in an animal's eyes that long. My dog won't look at me that long. And it was really weird.
Who broke first?
Huh?
Who stopped looking first?
He did, of course.
Yeah, right, yeah.
He just swished his tail and he went away. Right down the thing, but it was amazing. And I thought about that all the time we were doing the recording.
Thank you.
I should have got foxes for all the actors, If you told me that, I would have arranged that preparation for each person, and I feel like they would have. But each one should be different anyway, so.
Jason, you never had a moment with a fox?
I actually did have a moment with a fox. Not as good as that, but I was with Wes. Remember, we were in London recently. The movie played there, and we went and we were on our way to a cast and or a party for all the animators and crew who worked on the film. And on our way to the party, we saw a fox run right in front of our car and stop and look at us, and then it bolted. But it was bizarre to see. I live, in California. I don't see foxes like that run in front of a car. But the driver said it was
they
not
look
an
at
uncommon
you.
thing. Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they're they're very beautiful. They're kind of magical animals. But for the last 3 years, anytime anybody I know has had anything to do with a fox, they're like, this is an omen. So I really feel connected to everyone's experiences of foxes.
Okay, more omen questions over here in the back.
I was wondering, with working with animation, was there any room to improvise at all, or is it just
The question was, given that it's animation, was there any room to improvise with this?
I'll tell you one thing. One interesting thing, both Meryl and Jason, working with them, what I really enjoyed was that, with a movie like this, they can have the lines in front of them if they want. There's, the kind of freedom, and it's almost like you're recording a rehearsal. And with people who have, both of them are actors who, in my experience, are actors who can come up with a lot of different ways to do something. And so they're, the improvisation is just that they have ideas for how to interpret this text, and also they were both, they did their own growling. When they became the animals, they kind of went with it, and that was kind of fun to see. Just to see them just sort of,
Yeah, we never get asked to do that. Well, rarely.
Yeah, rarely.
I'm asking you both now, will you each growl? They're angry, It'd be tough on you sometimes. Yeah.
We have a question here in the fourth row.
Okay.
This is for Wes. How different was it for you making this film compared to your other films because it was your first adaptation and it was your first animated movie?
Yes, well, the difference in adaptation is just, is just having this book to go to. But the process of making it, I think for me, the clearest difference in the process is when you're doing a live action movie, you have your day set up and you're going to do this shot and then this shot and then this shot and then this shot. And, eventually the sun's going to go down. And it's sort of a sequential race to whatever's going to end the day. And with a movie like this, you have as many as 30 shots going simultaneously, but very, very slowly. And a whole team of other people who are building many, many sets that are going to come next, and people building your actual characters. They're making puppets, and also you're editing the movie. You start editing the movie before you shoot it with drawings. So there's a whole storyboard team and an editorial team, and the day is spent going back and forth, sort of frantically from one task to another as you slowly make your way along. And at the end of the day, you don't finish anything.
I was going to say, how much do you get done in a day? Because it's moving like this, right? Like
yeah,
this.
you just each shot you just get a couple of seconds, a few seconds at the most, and depending on how complicated it is, it can be very, very little time. But it's exciting anyway because there's so much happening at once, and there's so many people who are bringing in all this expertise and all this experience and kind of ingenuity to it. And they're all, the other thing is they're working from their voices. We have these recordings. So
the voices are first.
The voices are first, and for the animators, I feel like the voices are their inspiration. They're like a second round of the performance, but it starts with what the actors do, and then they kind of interpret that. So it's very interesting.
Do you do this after it is done and call them back in and say we need more, we need something else?
Every now and then we say we added a little bit. We added another scene here or some other lines here. And are you free on Thursday or Friday for an hour? And they see what they can figure out, and they go to some room somewhere, and we end up on some link up, and they start growling again.
That's good. You both go to some room somewhere. I like that. That's a good idea. That brings up there's been some discussion about the fact that you're in Paris while this is happening and they're shooting in London, and yet what you just said seems to explain that so well to me. How could you be there every day watching this go and saying, no, I want it to move a fraction this way or that way? Can you just answer that question?
Yeah, well, it's just, I spent probably 1 week out of each month on the set. I wasn't on the set every day. I spent more of my time away from the set than on it. And really, that was because I preferred it that way. I felt more inspired because as I went into originally I thought I was going to record the actor, make the script, record the actors, and work on the design and plan the movie. But I thought at a certain point I would hand it over to this team of animators, and they would send me back the movie. And I would put in an order for one Fantastic Mr. Fox. And it didn't work out like that at all. It became, it takes, doing a movie like this is completely all-consuming for, a year of preparation and a year of shooting, and I just kind of had to figure out a system where I could be as involved as I ultimately realized I was going to need to be to feel good about it, and stay sane and stay focused. So it was a super complicated computer system that was designed, and then also just to sort of, we invented a kind of bureaucracy for the movie that it needed.
So we need more bureaucracy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good thing. I wasn't even going to ask whether they were Apple computers.
We have a question from
They
House
were.
right over here.
They were. Yeah.
This is for Wes. What was your favorite thing that came with making an animated film that you don't get to do with live action?
Thing you can't do with live action that you could do with animated. I think. Well, Jason pointed out to me that he felt like there's certain kinds of blocking that I've always kind of tried to get. Apparently I've tried to get him to do things that humans can't do, and that he saw those in the movie. So I think it might be, if somebody leaving the frame in one place and coming in upside down in another part of it or something. But the other thing is, there are things you can do in this, like you can't change real actors' eyeballs. It's just not done. And that was actually a ongoing part of this story. that sort of thing.
Here you go, sir.
I have a question for Mr. Anderson. I keep trying to make stop motion videos with my dad's video camera, and I can never do it. What are the techniques?
So well, are you how are you doing it? You're doing like because the one key thing is with probably if you're using a video camera where you press record and then press stop, you're getting too long of a beat. You know, I think there may be. I know a guy who can help you with this. He's right over there. I'm gonna connect you with somebody who's gonna solve this problem. And if he can't, there's a whole infrastructure in this building. I think that we can tap into when we have the connections right now. And I really think that we're gonna figure this out.
We have a question over here to the back.
My question's for Jason and Meryl. What made you guys want to be a part of this movie?
Oh, well, I always wanted to be in one of Wes's movies. I've been a huge fan forever, and I was really happy when he called me. So,
I love Wes as a person and as a filmmaker and writer, and it's very, his material is rare. It's a rare commodity, I feel like, out there in the world, and when you get one of his scripts, they're just so incredible, and and I want to work on them because I know that they're going to be different than anything else. And I also know from working with him twice and a half before that we did a short movie, and that it's always an adventure, that it's never the typical. No movie is typical, for the record. Every movie is an adventure and always different, and it never feels like, oh, this is the same old. I mean, it's amazing always to me how a movie gets made. I love it, but with Wes, it's totally an adventure and unlike anything else I've ever experienced. And the movie, it ends up always being just one part of the experience that I have with him. And I have, like, for instance, we have this movie that we're here to talk about tonight, but also all these wild and amazing stories of rolling around on the ground, growling and digging in the mud, and just memories of being with Mr. George Clooney or Bill Murray, all these people. It ends up also just being a wild and insane and totally perfect life experience as well as a movie.
Our next question's from the other side of the house.
Hi, Mr. Anderson. What did you use to shoot the film?
That's a good question. It's interesting, I guess. Anyway, it's interesting to me. This movie is shot on like SLR cameras, like a camera you wear around your neck when you go sightseeing. It's still cameras, digital still cameras. Sometimes, a giant motion control rig, a crane, and at the end of this giant thing is a little, a camera, a Canon, AE1 or whatever it is. But each frame of those is much higher resolution than even like an anamorphic, a cinemascope frame. So it's a very high, there's a lot of information in there, and it just sends it into a hard drive. And the movie is playing back these still pictures one after another.
Question over here in the back.
Hi. I was wondering, all of your movies, I think the greatest part about your whole your body of work is that they're all so drastically different, but you can still tell that they're your movies, and you really infuse your personality in all of your movies. So I was wondering if you could talk about maybe how you developed your style.
Absolutely. Oh, sorry. Is that for Wes? Sorry. Sorry. My bad. Peter, I am an egomaniac. You're right.
That was for me, right? Actually, I like Meryl's answer about the process, that she doesn't have one. That's kind of for me applies to this. I don't think of a style for me. For me, this movie was just trying to do Roald Dahl. That was always the thing. And then when it's finished, everybody says, this is, I like that you said my movies are all drastically different, and yet you can tell some connection. Often people say to me, my movies are sort of all the same, which is kind of the half-empty version of it, I guess. But I actually don't make an effort to have a style. I just sort of, I'm usually just trying to think of what can we do to make it funnier or more interesting or just kind of refine it, and it ends up like that.
I have a follow-up question. Do you have a fascination with the Futura typeface, and why does it always appear in your films?
I like that we got one from the guy who's been handing the microphone around. That's good. I do like the Futura typeface. The first short film I made was we used that, and I've always liked it. And it's also in the Stanley Kubrick movies, and it's possible that I had picked up on that somewhere along the way, and stole it from him.
Our next question's over here, sir.
Yes, Wes. Were you influenced by Ray Harryhausen at all?
Yes, definitely influenced by Harryhausen. All those kind of Greek mythology movies. The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, or there's another Sinbad movies, and the Clash of the Titans, Golden Voyage. Yes, Golden Voyage of Sinbad, and Jason the Argonauts. That sort of, I don't want to say it's creaky, but there's something a bit, you can tell, it's not like this looks exactly like real life. And there's a charm in it. Those fighting skeletons are just, they're magical. So that's certainly what, that's the sort of thing that made me want to work in this medium.
Because you made a movie that looks like it's been touched by human hands, which is the best compliment I could pay it. That you're dealing with this, and yet through the voices, through the movement, there's a humanity in it. When what we see now is basically, let's get the latest one out. Let's just do it and move it along.
Yeah, Henry Selick, who's kind of the living master of this, he had some nice ways of describing it. He describes it as, it is touched by human hands. Henry describes it as that you can sense that it's been touched by human hands that have been pulled away. We're seeing in between. We're seeing the little moments in between the hands. And he also, I've heard him compare the stop motion to working with toys. That's why, like, something that people connect to. It's like the toys you had as a child, and someone's made them alive.
Great. We have a question here in the back.
For Wes, I don't know if you could talk a little bit about why you make movies or how you got into film and where that kind of came from.
Well, I always loved movies. I liked them from when I was a kid. So I think I was talking with Noah Baumbach about this the other night, and it wasn't so much the desire to make movies that we were thinking of. It was how we made the sort of transition into doing it, and we both had referred to these books that came out at a certain time. Like Spike Lee wrote a book about making She's Gotta Have It. That was that was a movie I was very inspired by in the first place. But then when I read about his process of making it, I thought I could follow this. I became obsessed with the idea of a limited partnership. That's some legal concept of raising money from a series of dentists, and and that became like my fixation. So that was one of the things for me.
Great, and we have time for about one more question. So,
first of all, I want to say I love all of you. Thank you for changing my life. And you guys are great. Also, this next question is for all of you, especially Jason, who seems to get cast in very similar roles, like Jonathan Ames and Max Fisher. Which has been your most challenging project to date?
My most challenging project. Whoa. They're all really hard. They've all been equally challenging and totally different. like Meryl Streep was saying earlier, it is always different, and they're all like a bit terrifying right before I go into them, and I feel like it's going to be impossible almost, and I feel that way until about 3 weeks after I'm done shooting it, honestly, and which makes no sense, but it has a half-life or something. My anxiety about it, but. They're all really hard, so I don't know. I'm sorry there's not a specific answer, but they've all been very challenging.
Yes, you can, of course.
Oh, well, do you have one, Meryl? Do you have one that's your most challenging? Do you, just as my, or do you think? I mean, do you think of any of them that way?
Yes, but I won't mention what they are.
Oh, okay.
Because they're challenging for reasons that have nothing to do with the challenges of filmmaking. They're just,
Somebody on
a
the
drag.
set.
Something is a drag. But it's very rare. I have to say I'm really, really spoiled in my life that I've gotten to work with so many amazing directors and writers and actors and actresses.
There's one of yours that when I saw Postcards from the Edge, that to me was like a different. I love that movie, and that was a very different kind of I mean, you played very different characters from one another along the way, but that one was that character was so. There's so much. It's such an open kind of character emotionally and singing that was. I was hoping you were going to talk about that one.
Oh no! Well,
Anyway, it was probably
that
fun,
was so
wasn't it?
easy and fun. It was ridiculous. I shouldn't have been paid. I loved it. Loved doing it.
Yeah, I love that movie. Anyway, sorry.
It's okay, but don't do it again, please. This, I think it's fitting to end talking about this specific movie, Fantastic Mr. Fox. And you, of course, have been working on it since the Reagan administration. You've been thinking about it forever. But when you look at it, there doesn't have to be a scene with the two of you that you're in, or specifically that. But when you look at it, is there a moment even in this movie that sticks with you, that really just kind of sticks to the wall, and no matter how many times you look at it, you say, that was my dream, that I would get close to what that moment is? Nodding. They're nodding, but no one's going to share. Jason, I know you'll say it right away.
Why do you say that?
No, because it looked like you weren't going to do it, so that's why I did it.
Well, there's two moments I love in the movie. One is actually with Meryl and George. That's where she takes him aside. She's going to talk to you for a minute, and they go into this beautiful, sparkling room, and they have a very amazing and beautiful conversation. I like that one a lot. And also, I like the scene. I don't want to ruin it, but there's a scene towards the end of the movie that I really think is very moving and very powerful. And we've referenced it earlier tonight. Bill Murray has something to do with a wolf, and that's a really powerful moment, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I didn't get to run around on the farm. I was by myself, and I didn't have George Clooney. I did the whole thing with Wes, so we really had like a relationship. It was just amazing. And then to go in and see it last night, and to see, I mean, the whole thing just took my breath away. Just the detail in it, and it was just in a room, just us speaking to each other, and then I saw the film, which is so detailed and really funny and heartfelt and weird, that it just. I love that scene because that you were talking about with Bill,
Yeah.
But so many of the scenes I just loved. I can't pick one out.
Oh, the scene I was going to say was actually the one that Jason said that's between you and George in the sparkly thing,
That's because that was our scene.
There's just a whole other thing going on here.
But having that one already taken, I would say there's one other I think of that's between Jason and my younger brother, that was I mean, it's you know, I don't want to describe it. There's no point in describing the scene, but it was nice to see. You know, my brother has not acted in films before, and this role he plays is it's his voice. You know, the way he talks is unusual and sort of courtly and gentle, and that was obviously it was a great thrill for me working with these two people. And such a a strong cast, but it was also a real pleasure for me working with him, in a completely different way. And also, we grew up with Dahl and this book together, so it just occurred, and was ultimately I was very happy it did, that he's one of the stars.
Well, Jason, Meryl, Wes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.